There is a silence that comes after the fire. Not peace and not yet, but stillness. A sacred kind. The kind that doesn't ask you to move. The kind that lets you kneel in the ashes and finally say it. I'm tired. Not tired like need. Anetbe, tired like soul-worn. Tired like you've been carrying a 100-pound smile on your face while your chest quietly caves in. Tired from climbing success ladders that led to nowhere but more ladders. Tired from performing life instead of living it. Tired from doing everything right and still feeling wrong inside. You know this place. You may be in it right now. That moment when your drive becomes a weight. When your calendar feels like a cage. When your goals feel like ghosts that haunt more than help. When everything you built begins to feel like it cost you. You. No one talks about that cost. No. One says that burnout isn't just about stress. It's about betrayal. Not betrayal by others, but betrayal of the part of you that knew better. The part that whispered, this isn't it, this isn't the way. But you kept going. Because stopping felt like failure. Because slowing down felt like weakness. Because the world doesn't reward stillness, quote, it rewards hustle. But now there is no more hustle left, and strangely, that's where something sacred begins. Look around you, yes, the forest burned, but what you're standing in is not ruin, it's reveal. The fire stripped away what could not last, what was never true. What you built from pressure, not presence. What you pursued from fear of being not enough. What you clung to in a panic to prove you had purpose. And now you can see the ground again. Now you can hear your own breath. This is not your end. This is your sacred interruption. You didn't break. You burned. And that's different, because what breaks can shatter, but what burns can clear, can purify, can begin again, not as who you were, but as who you were always becoming. There is an old strength buried in the soil of this moment, not the kind of strength that grits its teeth and pushes through, the kind of strength that closes its eyes and listens, the kind that doesn't fear the quiet anymore, the kind that doesn't chase a finish line. It creates rhythm. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose, but few ever saw the spiritual root of what he meant. They read his words like fuel for ambition, but missed the fire of alignment beneath them. This isn't about winning harder. It's about remembering the part of you that doesn't hustle, because it knows what time it is inside your life, knows when to act on and when to be still, knows that true success is never frantic. So here you are, in the forest after the fire. And here I am, not to fix you, not to drive you forward, Bastumma, but to remind you you're not lost. You're listening now, and that changes everything. Let that be your first breakthrough. Not doing something, just stopping long enough to finally feel. To feel the grief of what burned. To feel the relief of not pretending anymore. To feel the pulse of something sacred returning. This story does not begin with a plan. It begins with a pause, with a breath, with a whisper rising through the ash. I'm still here and I'm not done. At some point, the mask became your face. It didn't start that way. You were full once, of curiosity, of fire, of something unspoken but whole. You were lit from within, not with ambition, with presence. You moved because you felt something true calling you forward. But then the world taught you to trade that for performance. Smiles for results. Urgency for value. Achievement for love. And slowly, so slowly, the face you wore to survive became the face you believed was you. You didn't even notice at first. You were applauded, promoted, admired. People called you driven, passionate, relentless. But beneath it all, something sacred was leaking out of you drop by drop. You ignored the early signs, the way your mornings felt heavier, the way your laugh became shorter, more forced, the way silence started to feel threatening, as if slowing down might reveal just how hollow you'd become. You told yourself it was normal, part of the grind, a season, a sacrifice for the bigger vision. But that vision, it kept moving further away the harder you chased it. And all the while a voice, faint but relentless, kept whispering, "Is this really it?" You wanted to silence it, so you worked harder, pushed more, built routines, bought planners, scheduled motivation into your calendar like medicine. But motivation can't fill a cracked vessel, and that's what you had become. Cracked, not broken, not weak, just misaligned. Split down the middle between who you really were and who you thought you had to be. Let's name it now, because pretending is exhausting. You were never lazy. You were misused by a culture that equates worth with output, by systems that reward exhaustion and call it excellence, by inner narratives that confuse self-abandonment with strength. Burnout isn't a failure of effort, it's a failure of rhythm, a life lived entirely in the on position, no pause, no breath, no integration. Just constant output until you forget what input even feels like. That's what hollowed you. It wasn't the work itself, it was the why behind it, the subtle, sick craving for validation, the fear of falling behind, the need to prove. Prove. You became a servant to your own potential. Let me say that again, you became a servant to your own potential. You weren't chasing a dream, you were running from shame. The shame of not being enough unless you were producing something visible. The shame of resting when the world keeps moving. The shame of feeling lost after achieving so much. But how could you not feel lost? No one taught you how to return to yourself. Only how to achieve, escape, improve, repeat. So you lived in a loop. Start the day strong, crush your list, push through fatigue, reward yourself with distractions, collapse into sleep, restless and unfinished. Wake up with pressure already waiting at the door. You built a life that looked like success, but felt like suffocation. Because there's a difference between pressure and power. Pressure is external. It demands, it threatens, it punishes. Power is internal. It commands, it aligns, it knows. And that's what's been missing. Your knowing. You knew this wasn't sustainable. You just didn't know how to stop without everything falling apart. But the truth? It was already falling apart. Just on the inside and where no one could see. The mask was smiling, but your soul was silent. And maybe that's why you're here. Not to get a new system for success, but to remember the voice beneath the mask. The one that's tired of performing. The one that wants peace more than praise. The one that's done hustling for approval and ready to reclaim alignment. So let's do something radical. Let's grieve the version of you that tried so hard to be good. Let's honor the part that performed, not because it was fake, but because it was afraid. Let's stop pretending that burnout is a badge. It's a wound. And like all sacred wounds, it comes bearing a message. The way you were living was not the way. And that's okay, because now you're ready to listen. And listening changes everything. You're not here to be hollow. You're here to be whole. But to be whole, you must first pause the performance. You must stop running. You must give yourself back to yourself, not as a project, but as a presence. Let the mask crack. Let the old rhythms collapse. Let the pressure melt into silence. Because in that silence, something ancient begins to speak again. Not ambition. Not anxiety, but a deep internal knowing that says, you were never meant to live this way. You were meant to live in rhythm, in harmony with the truth of who you are. The hustle hollowed you, yes, but it also humbled you. And now, in the stillness, you're ready to hear what Hill really meant when he said the key to all achievement was not force, but alignment with definiteness of purpose. But before we talk about purpose, we must talk about rhythm. The rhythm that never rushes, the rhythm that sustains, the rhythm that's always been waiting. Inside you, are you ready to remember it? There's a rhythm that governs all things. The tides know it, the seasons obey it, even your breath. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause, moves in quiet reverence to it. But somewhere along the way, you were taught to override rhythm, to worship momentum instead of alignment, to measure worth by movement, to treat stillness like weakness, and so you lost your internal tempo, the one you were born with. You started marching to the pulse of the world's anxiety, deadlines, notifications, performance metrics. You became fluent in urgency. And, slowly, almost imperceptibly, you forgot how to hear your own life. Let's pause here, not just to breathe, but to listen. Because buried under the noise, there's a law most people never learn to name. Napoleon Hill hinted at it, but few noticed. They saw his call to action. His demand for definiteness of purpose, organized planning, persistence, decision, but they missed the undercurrent, the pulse beneath the page. They missed the law of rhythm. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Napoleon Hill, do you hear it now? He wasn't just preaching grit. He was pointing to cycles. He was speaking of seeds, not shortcuts. He was tuned to a truth the impatient can't perceive. There is a divine rhythm to real success, and it cannot be rushed. Not because life is slowest, but because you are sacred. And sacred things move on time, not on pressure. The law of rhythm isn't loud. It doesn't shout in calendars or scream in to-do lists. It whispers in the cracks between tasks. It hums beneath your best ideas. It waits in the stillness you've been taught to avoid. It's why you feel most aligned when you stop trying. It's why your best insights come in the shower, in the car, in the quiet after collapse. Because rhythm needs space to move. Let's name what happened to you. You traded rhythm for rush. And in doing so, you began to live outside of yourself, chasing goals that didn't feed you, answering to timelines that weren't yours, following formulas that forgot your soul. But here's the revelation. Hill never meant for you to live like that. Read his work not with the eyes of hustle, but with the ears of alignment. You'll start to see it everywhere. The subconscious mind works day and night. Through a method of procedure, it draws upon forces unknown to man. Napoleon Hill, he's not describing effort. He's describing flow. He's describing the rhythm of the unseen, the deeper currents of identity, belief, clarity. He's describing the state you enter when your doing is born from being. Let's go deeper. You've heard of autosuggestion. It's Hill's term for planting thoughts into your subconscious. But autosuggestion is not a mantra. It's a tempo. It only takes root when it aligns with your inner rhythm, when it's spoken not from anxiety, but from calm clarity. That's why affirmations often fail, not because they're wrong, but because they're rushed, forced, frantic, planted in shallow soil with no time to grow. Hill's real secret wasn't repetition. It was alignment with universal law. He knew the subconscious could not be bullied, only invited, and invitation requires rhythm, breath, silence, receptivity, pattern. He knew that sustainable success, the kind that doesn't burn you, is born in harmony, not haste. So why doesn't the world teach this? Because rhythm doesn't sell, rhythm can't be rushed, and rhythm threatens systems that profit from panic. But here's the shift. Once you reclaim your rhythm, you become immune to urgency. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop running and start resonating. You begin to build your days. Like a composer writes a score, deliberate, spacious, with rests as important as notes. This is what was missing from your life. Not another planner, not another morning routine, but a return to inner rhythm. The place where true focus is born, where actions don't feel forced, they feel inevitable. Where your body, your mind, your spirit are moving in time, together. And from that place, you don't chase success. You conduct it. Just like a metronome sets the pace for the symphony, your inner rhythm sets the tone for your results. No more chaos, no more guessing, just deliberate, sacred motion, beat by beat. So how do you begin to reclaim this? Not with more doing, but with more noticing. Start here, notice your breath. Notice when you tighten your jaw or speed up your words. Notice the exact moment your calendar becomes a trap instead of a tool. Then pause. Not forever, just long enough to return. Return to your center. Return to your rhythm. Return to the knowing that what's meant for you does not require panic. From here, every decision shifts. You don't ask, what should I do next? You ask, what is aligned with my rhythm right now? That's what Hill really meant by definiteness of purpose, not a static goal, but a living frequency, a pulse that becomes your compass, a tempo that brings your life into harmonic motion. You don't get ahead, you get in tune, and from that tune everything flows. Decisions become simple, tasks lose their emotional weight, energy returns, peace rises, because now you're not at war with time. You're in rhythm with it. This is the clarity you were missing. You thought you lacked discipline, you thought you needed more motivation, but what you really lacked was resonance, the quiet alignment between your inner tempo and your outer tasks. Once that is restored, you become unstoppable, not through speed but through sovereignty. No more chasing, no more collapse, just deliberate, grounded, sacred motion. Hill's formula never burned you. The world's distortion of it did. Now you know the truth. And now you're ready to live it. But rhythm alone isn't enough. Rhythm must be embodied, practiced, consecrated. So in the next chapter, we begin the sacred rebuild. You've heard of discipline as force. Now, you will experience discipline as devotion. There is a moment, after the collapse, after the silence, when something inside you decides to rise, not with a roar, not with a comeback speech, but with a breath. Just one, held a little longer, felt a little deeper. It doesn't look like action, but it is. It's the beginning of the sacred rebuild, not of your brand, not of your image, of your inner temple, because that's what burned down. Not just your energy, your inner structure, the quiet scaffolding that holds up your days, the altar where intention used to live, the rhythm you forgot how to keep. So, now we rebuild, not quickly, not to impress, but like monks rebuild temples after a fire with reverence, stone by stone, breath by breath. This is not productivity, this is presence. Let's begin with the truth. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is devotion. It is not what you do to yourself, it's what you build for yourself. A rhythm, a sanctuary, a sacred agreement between you and the version of you who remembers. You've been trained to see discipline as rigidity, restriction, a grind. But what if discipline is actually a form of care? A spiritual container to protect your alignment, a way to say, I value my energy so much I refuse to waste it. That's what we're reclaiming now, not a routine, a ritual, and all ritual begins in silence. Stone 1. Morning stillness before the world enters. Before your phone reclaims your brain, before your identity is pulled back into roles, tasks, expectations, there is a doorway. It only opens if you're quiet enough to see it. It doesn't last long, 10, maybe 15 minutes, but in those minutes you can reclaim your rhythm, not by rushing to journal or meditate or visualize, but by doing one sacred thing, sitting in stillness, with breath. Let it feel awkward. Let it feel unproductive. Let the old urge to do something twitch in your chest, and stay. You are not sitting to be good. You are sitting to return. This is the rebuild. This is the temple floor. Stone 2. Sacred writing, not content, not notes, not a to-do list or a goal outline. Sacred writing is different. It's not for the world. It's for you. It's the voice beneath the noise. It's the hand that writes not what it knows, but what it feels rising. Each morning after the stillness, write. Start with this question. What do I know right now that I'm pretending not to know? Then let the pen move. No edits. No filters, no formatting. This is not self-help, it is self-recovery. Over time, this becomes a mirror, a map, a reminder of who you are when the world isn't speaking over you. Stone 3, time-blocked presence. You don't need more time. You need more truth per time. That means choosing. That means blocking. Not to squeeze in more, but to consecrate less. What if your calendar became your altar? What if instead of managing time, you began honoring it? Choose 3 blocks per day. No more. 1 for deep work, 1 for real connection, 1 for inner renewal. That's it. Protect them like sacred fire. No multitasking, no noise, no leaks. This is not time management, this is life alignment. Stone 4, end of day command most. People don't end their day, they just collapse into sleep. Their energy still leaking into open tabs, unfinished conversations, internal chaos. You can't build a temple on unrest. You need closure, command, stillness. So each evening before bed, ask, what did I honor today? Where did I abandon myself today? What will I release before I sleep? Write it. Say it out loud if you must. Close the loop. This is how you teach your system safety. This is how you rewire for peace. This is how discipline becomes a doorway, not a demand. This is the sacred rebuild, small, intentional, unshakable, because what you're building is not just a routine, it's an identity, the kind that doesn't get thrown off by chaos, the kind that doesn't wait to feel ready, the kind that remembers even when it's tired. This is the part no one tells you. Discipline is the ground where identity becomes real, not because it forces you, but because it frees you. Each block of time, each morning of stillness, each end-of-day reflection, it's not about productivity, it's about protection. You are protecting the version of you that hears clearly, acts deliberately, and lives in alignment. You are rebuilding your inner temple, and stone by stone, the old fatigue begins to fade. Because you're no longer reacting to life, you're conducting it. You've always carried this code, the knowing that discipline isn't something you find, it's something you return to, not from shame, from devotion to the part of you that knows. I don't need more willpower. I need more truth in my structure. And now you have it, stillness, sacred writing, time-blocked presence, end-of-day command. That's your rhythm, that's your rebuild. And as you live inside it, something begins to rise through the ashes. Not just your energy, but your essence, the part of you that never burned, the part that waited for you to remember, and that is where we go next. There is a fire inside you that never went out, not when you broke down, not when you gave up, not when you walked through months, maybe years, of numbness, fatigue, and confusion. It was never gone, just covered by roles, covered by noise, covered by the masks you wore to survive in a world that asked for your performance, but never your presence. But here's the truth, quiet and clear. You never stopped being who you are, you just forgot how to hear that voice. And when the world around you burned, when your goals collapsed, your schedule emptied, your willpower cracked, the fire inside you didn't die, it waited. It waited under the ashes, patient, silent, undeniable. That's where real identity lives, not in your output, not in your title, not in your habits, in the quiet, enduring flame that remains when everything else is stripped away. And that's what we reclaim now. Let's speak it aloud. You are not your exhaustion. You are not your to-do list. You are not your failures or your successes. You are the one who watches, the one who listens, the one who decides. That's the real you. And though you've lived many versions, the people pleaser, the overachiever, the fixer, the dreamer, beneath them all, there is a still and sovereign identity that never burned. That's the one Hill was speaking to. That's the one he built his entire philosophy around, not the version of you hustling to succeed, but the one who already knows they were born to command. You see, Hill never intended for his readers to become something. He wrote to help them remember. And when he said definiteness of purpose, he wasn't handing you a goal. He was handing you back to yourself. Because when you remember who you are, you no longer need the world's permission to move. You move from inner command. You speak from stillness. You act without asking. You build without begging for validation. But to live that way, you must reclaim your core identity. Not a brand, not a personal development label, your spiritual signature. The essence that doesn't change when circumstances shift. The essence that can't be marketed, only embodied. And that embodiment begins with a shift from effort to embodiment. Let's make this clear. You don't need to find yourself. You need to stop abandoning yourself. Every time you said yes when your body screamed no. Every time you pushed through instead of pausing. Every time you traded presence for productivity, you stepped away from your essence. But here's the grace. You never drifted too far. You're only ever one aligned decision away. And that decision isn't dramatic. It's deliberate. It sounds like I don't rush anymore. I don't negotiate with my knowing. I don't abandon my rhythm to meet someone else's urgency. I don't perform. I command. Because when you operate from your true identity, discipline is no longer resistance. It's resonance. You're not forcing yourself to show up. You're following the instructions your soul already gave you. That's the code Hill encoded into every line. He wasn't creating robots. He was awakening rulers. But somewhere along the way, we misunderstood the message. We thought Hill was glorifying force. We thought we had to become someone better, but the deeper truth, the flame of who you are has never needed improving, only uncovering. So let's name this flame again. Let's return to your original frequency. Ask yourself, when I'm most myself, no audience, no pressure, no mask, what am I like? And listen, maybe the answer doesn't come in words. Maybe it's a feeling, a stillness, a pull towards something that doesn't need explaining. That's your core. That's your operating system. And when you live from that place, everything aligns. You stop reacting. You start responding. You don't hustle for energy. You become a source of it. Because identity is not what you think. It's how you hold your decisions. It's the frequency you embody when no one's watching. And that frequency determines everything. Your boundaries, your schedule, your standards, your relationships. When your frequency is low, anxious, reactive, scattered, you attract chaos. You tolerate nonsense. You make decisions from fear. When your frequency is high, grounded, clear, sacred, you become magnetic. Not to attention, but to alignment. And alignment is what creates sustainable success. Not pressure, not luck, not trends, just frequency. Pass, rhythm, track, and flow. That's the real formula. And it begins when you stop pretending and start remembering. So let this be your pattern break. Stop chasing transformation. Start returning to embodiment. You don't need another version of you. You need the original. Unfiltered, unafraid, unburied. That version is not some distant dream. It's closer than breath. It shows up every time you pause before reacting. Every time you breathe before you speak. Every time you create from calm instead of chaos. That's you. The you who never burned. The you who's always known. And from that place you stop living from force and start building from fire. Not fire that consumes. Fire that clarifies. The eternal flame that lights the next chapter. Where your actions are no longer reaction, but revelation. Let's step into that, because now that you've remembered who you are, it's time to awaken why you're here. Before any symphony begins, there is silence. The conductor raises their hand and holds still. They do not rush. They do not perform. They wait for every eye, every breath, every instrument to align. Only then does the music begin, not from noise, from command. This is your new rhythm. This is your new way. And it begins not with a strategy, but with stillness backed by identity. You were never meant to chase purpose. You were meant to conduct it, to raise your life like a hand before the orchestra, to move when movement aligns, to rest when stillness restores. This isn't passivity, it's precision, because the most powerful rhythm is not reactive, it's intentional. That's what Napoleon Hill was pointing toward all along, not to hustle as a way of life, but to live in such alignment with your inner conductor, your sovereign self, that your yes carries weight and your no needs no explanation. You don't get things done by force anymore. You get them done because you are in time with your values, in time with divine alignment, in time with the inner law that governs sustainable success. You no longer live on the world's clock. You live on your command frequency. Let's make this practical. You're not here to stay motivated. You're here to stay aligned. Motivation rises and falls. Alignment remains. So how does a life in command feel? It's not chaotic. It's not loud. It's deliberate. It's waking up and moving in rhythm, not reaction. It's looking at your week not as a battlefield, but as sacred ground. It's choosing your actions like a sculptor chooses where to carve, not out of frenzy, but clarity. It's letting your priorities emerge from purpose, not pressure. You do less. But everything you do moves mountains, because you're not scattering your energy across endless urgencies. You're conducting it. You're directing it with stillness at the center. This is what sacred success looks like, not because it's glamorous, but because it's governed. You've stopped outsourcing your power. Now, you own your calendar. You own your agreements, you own your presence. So here's your new rhythm, not in theory, in practice. Begin each week in stillness. Don't plan in panic, plan in presence. Ask, what matters this week? Not because it's urgent, but Because it's aligned. 2. Let your yes be a contract with your future self. No more casual commitments, no more pleasing for approval. Every yes is a signature. Make it sacred. Protect 90 minutes a day for what builds your future, not what maintains the noise. What moves your legacy forward? Non-negotiable, consecrated. Anchor your day in identity, not outcome. Outcomes shift, markets move, people change, but identity it commands. Ask each morning how would the aligned version of me move through this day? End each day not in exhaustion, but in command. Before bed, review, not to judge, to realign. What pulled me off rhythm today? Where did I lead well? What will I choose again tomorrow? You don't need a new plan. You need a new posture, a posture of quiet authority. Not frantic hustle, not perfectionism, just sacred presence, repeated. Because when you move from rhythm, you build without burnout. You achieve without abandoning. You create without collapsing. This is not a hack. It's a homecoming. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are conducting your place in it. Like the conductor before the downbeat, your power is not in how fast you move. Your power is in knowing when to move. And when you live this way, your entire environment begins to change because rhythm is contagious. People feel it. Time bends to it. Resources align with it. The world responds differently to someone who is not rushing. And you've become that someone. Let's tell the truth plainly. You were never undisciplined. You were disoriented, living outside your natural rhythm, seduced by noise, trained to panic. But now you remember, and that changes everything. Your purpose was never lost. It was simply buried beneath misalignment. It doesn't need to be found. It needs to be followed, and you follow it not with urgency, but with command in stillness, because you've rebuilt the temple, because you've remembered the flame, because you've reclaimed the rhythm. Now, you lead. This is sustainable success, not because you're always on, but because you know when to be still. Not because you have all the answers, but because you no longer abandon the question. You walk with authority, not from ego, but from essence. And from that place, your life becomes music, not noise, not rush, but resonance. That's the rhythm you've always been wired for. And now you move to it, by choice, by devotion, by identity. The fire is not behind you. It's in you now. Somewhere beneath all the collapse, beneath the goals. You couldn't finish, beneath the fatigue that kept creeping in, beneath the endless cycles of start again. A path was waiting, not a new one, not a perfect one, yours. It didn't disappear when you got overwhelmed. It didn't vanish when you burned out. It didn't give up on you when you gave up on yourself. It just waited, like the forest waits after fire, like green waits beneath ash. And now you see it, not with the eyes of urgency, but with the vision of someone who's returned to their rhythm, someone who no longer confuses movement with meaning, someone who no longer treats exhaustion as a badge of honor, someone who finally knows success without self is just survival. And survival is not your destiny. You were born to conduct, to build slowly, sacredly, to live in such deep alignment that every step feels like music, not noise. You've walked through the fire. You've laid new stones. You've remembered the flame, and now you walk the same world, but no longer the same way. This new way doesn't require perfect days. It doesn't ask you to be on all the time. It doesn't shame you when you pause. It expects you to pause, because pauses are sacred. Because your power isn't in your output, it's in your presence. You don't have to explain your pace. You don't have to justify your boundaries. You don't have to prove that you're getting things done. You move by inner command now, and inner command doesn't shout. It leads. It chooses slowly. It honors deeply. It follows the divine. Rhythm that never asks you to rush, only to listen. That is the path that waited for you. Not a louder life, a truer one. So where do you go from here? You go back into your life, but this time you don't abandon your alignment to do it. You wake up and ask not, what do I have to do today? But, what rhythm will I walk in? Today, you open your laptop, not with panic, but with presence. You make decisions, Not from fear, but from your core. You say yes, not from guilt, but from governed identity. And when the old noise tries to return, when urgency creeps, back in. When pressure pulls at your edges, you breathe. You return to the flame. You remember, I don't live in reaction, I move in rhythm. And just like that, you're home again. What you've built in these pages isn't a plan. It's a practice, a frequency, a remembering. That rhythm, you've always carried it. That flame, it never burned out. That path, it's been waiting beneath the noise, beneath the productivity pressure, beneath the shame of burnout, beneath the lies that said, if you slow down, you'll fall behind. You're not behind, you're right on time. Because the fire didn't destroy your future. It revealed what wasn't meant to follow you into it. Now you walk forward with hands open, steps measured, calendar consecrated, presence unshaken. Let this closing truth burn into your new rhythm. It was never about being ready. It was about remembering who you already are. So remember when you forget. Remember when you fall behind. Remember when old habits rise. Remember the stillness, the breath, the rhythm, the flame, the path, and then keep walking. You've always carried the code. Now you have the key, use it.